Hello, everyone. Welcome into the WST Bombers Report. My name is Hrabchak. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by my co-host, Zach Schnitzer, for a special off-season preview, off-season underway, whatever you want to call it, edition of the WST Bombers Report. And together, we're joined by a very special guest, the play-by-play voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Derek Taylor from 680 CJOB. Let's bring them both in. How are you guys doing tonight? Derek, start with you. You're the special guest for this special episode. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I'm not in the middle though. Center square though. Zach Schnitzer. That's all right. I'm good. It's after a long season. There's some time to decompress / decompose, and then get back to it. So I'm just in the middle of decomposing, as it were.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time. Just kind of as a starter, it's been a month and a couple of weeks since the end of last season. What are kind of your, we've had some time to decompress, like you say. What are your thoughts on last season? Obviously, home Grey Cup, not the way the Bombers wanted it to go. Have your thoughts on how the season went changed at all in the last month and a bit?
No, still surprised that the Bombers, and we saw it coming back in May, that the Bombers didn't go for it harder, knowing that they were hosting the Grey Cup, right? Spend some more money in this spot and that spot. And the decision we talked about in the preseason, they hired Jason Hogan to be their offensive coordinator. How's that going to go? Well, it was a point of contention all year long, I think, among the players and among the fans as well. That's they tried. They did, promoted from within and gave a smart guy a chance, and it just did not work out. And if you're not going to change horses in midstream, then it's going to turn out kind of the way it did. They were about the offense they were the year before. They just ended up being the results were not the same. 10-8 and not winning the division because, man, did the West Division get a lot stronger this year.
Yeah. And I was thinking about the it was, I don't think it was a dynasty because they didn't win 3. That's my criteria anyway. I mean, are the good times kind of over in Winnipeg? Like you're dominant for a number of years. Then, in 2024, they start off losing some close ones, and then they win 8 in a row. They win a bunch of close ones. And then last year, they lose some close ones. They get blown out by Calgary a couple times early. Then they make the playoffs, but they kind of get blown out in the playoff game against Davis Alexander to some extent. I mean, is this just the natural course of a team, or is there a reason for Bomber fans to think, okay, this was just a step back, but they can reload and get back to the mountain next year?
Well, if you want to take the positive view of it, I mean, they have the quarterback they believe in, right? In Zach Collaros. They have him signed up for 2026. You could probably, if you want, you can have your offensive line back. Stanley Bryant, Pat Neufeld, Chris Kolinkowski are free agents. You could have them back. Pokey Wilson is signed up through 2028. That's a nice step. If you can get Nick Dembski back, if you can get Brady Oliveira back, there's 3 skill pieces. You would certainly need to add into the receiving core. And what will they do at offensive coordinator? I'm just going to say that Zach Collaros loves Tommy Condell. He loved playing for Tommy Condell. He liked him so much. When Drew Brown was a free agent, he said, hey, go to Ottawa because Tommy Condell works there and you will love working with him. Condell's a free agent. So if Tommy Condell's the offensive coordinator, maybe, he and Zach apparently work well together. When you see Zach talk about Tommy Condell, you go, oh, okay, that he really does like working with Tommy. They seem to share the same ideas of how football should go. That's something I think it would be encouraged about, but you need receivers. They're going to need horses, right, in that receiving core, because by the end of last season, it was kind of the Elks and the Bombers for who has the least receiving core in the Canadian Football League, and other teams have just blown way past them in that respect. So there's going to be some work there to do in free agency. But if that happens, it's still, by some measures, the number 1 defense in the CFL, though it looks different than 2 years ago. There would be some hope. Man, though, the West is going to be tough, though, with BC and Saskatchewan. And what if Calgary actually gets better than that massive leap they took last year? It's going to be hard.
Absolutely. And we'll get to your thoughts. The schedule just came out and you mentioned some of the areas that you think the Bombers need to improve there. And I definitely want to get into free agency. But you mentioned the receivers and you mentioned Pokey Wilson. He's under contract now. It was interesting. I was not expecting this because he came in the week of the Banjo Bowl and signed for that season and next season, and now he's extending 2 more. So it's really a 3-year extension for Ontario Pokey Wilson. What can that do for Zach Collaros this next season, and how big of a signing is that for the Bombers?
Yeah, I think it's big because they've identified a guy that they think does what they want and could do it at a good level. Is Wilson a number 1 in the CFL? I don't know if I believe that, but would he be a really good number 2? Oh yeah, absolutely. I would be very happy with that. He's a guy who can make, his catch last year against Edmonton was the play of the year, maybe in pro football. Like just tips it to himself twice and makes the catch in the end zone in an incredible play. You go, okay, if he can do that a little more, and you think of, he can run the vertical routes, and he can do a lot of stuff at that X wide receiver position. That's a guy that they very clearly like. And for Pokey, there's probably some guaranteed money in that extension through 2028. So a real commitment to stay for, he'll be 29 in the final year of that contract. Here's a guy in his athletic prime that they like. You add him to a Dembski, and then you figure out what you're doing with those other 3 spots. You go, okay, that's a very good piece. To me, there needs to be more, because I don't think Pokey Wilson is Keon Hatcher. I don't think he's Kenny Lawler. I don't think he's in that class of CFL receiver, but he's clearly very good at what he does. So he is, and if you want to be in Winnipeg, absolutely, let's go. Let's go. Find your 1,000 yards, find your 8 touchdowns, and we'll get some guys to work with you.
I want to get to the schedule, Derek, but I just wanted to step back for a second. The Bombers didn't quite execute on the field, but you could argue off the field, the organization has been phenomenal. Like, they sold out the season for the first time in franchise history, by all accounts. And I went to most of the events for the Grey Cup. It was a phenomenal success. And then the social media team, especially with the schedulers, the video game, they're on fire. But then, CJOB, I have to say, like, to pump your tires a little bit, Derek, like, it's phenomenal. Like, I listen on the audio vault on CJOB's pregame and during the game play-by-play and in the post-game. And it's the biggest broadcast in the CFL by, I think, a long shot. I've listened to a couple others just to compare. Great, creative, fun features like Dealer's Choice, which I've stolen from my therapy groups, by the way. They love it. They roll a big fuzzy dice, and then I have questions for them. But just talk a little bit about what goes into that, Derek, because it's we're really treated well here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, the point you make about it is the biggest, as far as voices contributing to the broadcast, it's the biggest one in the country. Like, TSN has a lot of voices. We've got more on CJOB, right? And other shows where, you have 5 guys, 6 guys. Okay, well, we have like 11. So we have a lot of people contributing in a lot of ways. And so much of that is just voices and talent that I inherited, right? When I took over from Bob Irving 4 years ago, I was blessed that Doug Brown and guys like Ed Tate and Greg Mackling and Christian O'Mell decided, hey, you know what? I do want to be a part of this, because without them, it's nothing, right? I would not be very entertaining cracking Simpsons jokes for 7 hours to a great deal of the population, right? Some people might think, okay, that's really good. Okay, stop making Lionel Hutz jokes. And then they would tune out, and everybody else wouldn't know what I was talking about.
Can I just interrupt? Because I appreciate how you are persistent with the Simpsons joke, even when like Christian and Doug and Ed just like have no reaction. I just appreciate how you're just like, no, I'm gonna make these jokes because I like it and I think it's funny, and I personally think they're funny too. It's
radio, so you never kind of get a view of the look they give me. Like, what? I don't even know what that means. What do you mean cromulent? What is a perfectly cromulent play, DT, right? So I'm good with all that. So I was very blessed to have those guys and gals stick around, right? And then in our business, there are a million young people who, I say young people as a guy in his 50s, people in their 20s who want to make a foothold in something like this. And hey, is there some way I can contribute? And we're blessed to have a ton of guys and gals who want to be a part of Blue Bomber football. So it's just up to me to go, okay, well, let me find something that you can do. Okay, I think you can do this and you can kill it, right? So you bring those people in and everybody starts to get excited about this and everybody wants to be a part of a sports broadcast when you work at a place like CJOB. So it was just my goal to kind of harness that. And then I just kind of tie it all together and try to think of, okay, we're going to go inside baseball just for a sec. Like within 2 hours, we talk about the same thing a lot of time, right? Like we talk about, okay, they're going into Ottawa and Chris Streveler is the starting quarterback. We need to talk about that a lot of times. But you can talk about the same thing in a lot of different ways, right? So, Zach, you mentioned Dealer's Choice or Hot Takes or Paul LaPolice will come on, or we'll just talk about that same thing, but from a bunch of different angles. And then just acknowledging that, hey, not everybody's with us for the full 7 hours of a broadcast day. So, hey, if you're coming in with 45 minutes left, here's Cam Poitras with his hot take about how he thinks Chris Streveler is going to do. Does he think Streveler is going to go 3 for 8 for 54 yards? Probably not, because who would have saw that coming? But there's a lot of folks that go into it, and I end up getting pats on the back for it because I'm the guy kind of out front. But yeah, it just blessed to have so many people who love Bomber football and just wanted a chance to express that love and to be a part of this thing that we're building.
Yeah, I want to echo Zach's thoughts on the CJOB broadcast, and I appreciate you going inside baseball there. Absolutely love it. You guys do such a phenomenal job pre-game, post-game, and during the game, of course, which is when the real show happens for Blue Bombers football. And the next time we can hear some of that great CJOB in-game coverage is next season. And the schedule was released this week, Derek Taylor. What are kind of your initial takeaways as the Bombers? Personally, no week 1 bye, it's a win. I initially looked for the week 1 bye and went, okay, well, we left that last year. So happy there's no week 1 bye. But what stood out to you about the schedule?
Yeah, no week 1 bye like last year. None of that weird week 1 preseason game like the year before where you go, wait a minute, camp is 8 minutes old and they have to play in Saskatchewan? What's happening?
Yeah.
Wherever that game was. I love the way the byes are distributed this year. Like you mentioned, week 1 last year. The second one was in week 7, week 6, whatever that was. This year it's 3, 10, and 16, which means they're nicely distributed and they have no run of, as I just counted on my screen here, no more than 6 games in a row without a bye. I think is fantastic for the Bombers. It's 3 games on Thursday, 5 games on Friday, 2 games on Saturday, which if you're doing the math at home does equal 10 because Toronto will have one of its home games in Winnipeg. But if you like Thursdays, well, here's 3 of them. If you love Fridays, here's 5 of them. A couple of Saturdays as well, including the Banjo Bowl on that game where it's just the day is nothing but CFL football. I mean, from the Bombers' perspective, I really love this schedule. From a CFL fan's perspective, why aren't the defending champions playing on opening weekend? Why is there no Grey Cup rematch till I believe it's week 18? I might, if I'm the Hamilton Ticats, why do I play 10 weeks in a row? You couldn't have given me a little bye better. Why are there 3 byes in week number 1? As a general CFList, there'd be maybe some beefs, but I think from the Bombers' perspective, this is outstanding.
Absolutely. I also wonder about DT, like the Stampede Bowl, right? Like if you're a league that's trying to create traditions that bring in fans and from a marketing perspective, you had the Bombers get absolutely annihilated last year. I think the trophy's hideous, by the way. But anyway, I still want it as a fan. So maybe that was a little bit of a miss for me. Just jumping to let's say we talked about Wilson. They signed Cam Lawson. Before we get into maybe your wish list for guys out in the free agency market that the Bombers could really benefit from, are there any other Bombers who are going to be free agents that you would look at prioritizing?
Yes, absolutely. I want in my stocking for Christmas, Evan Holm, Dietrich Nichols, and Hrabchak Kramdi all back. To me, those are three incredibly important components of the back 6, and I can make an argument that they're all the best at their position in the Canadian Football League. I'd get a lot of pushback on Hrabchak Kramdi over CJ Rivas, over Darius Pickett, Kramdi is exactly what this defense needs. Evan Holm is awesome at that field corner. Dietrich Nichols will retire never having gotten near the love that he deserves for his work in the Canadian Football League. But to me, those 3 guys locked up in my stocking would be outstanding. Willie Jefferson, I just think So I was asked earlier today, do you think Willie will be back? I don't see Willie ever leaving. Kind of his own volition and kind of because he just should retire in blue and gold. I know he hasn't been a lifelong Bomber. I know he spent some time with a couple other West teams that we don't need to discuss, but he should, whenever he decides he's done at the age of 41, they should just the very next, in week, whatever it is, week 21 of that year, just put him in the Bombers Ring of Honor that season. So I pray that Willie's back. I'll be curious to see what happens on the defensive line because Doug Brown, the Hall of Famer, has talked in our broadcast about this isn't the most appealing system if you're a defensive lineman. I, as a Hall of Fame defensive tackle, would not like eating, 3 rushers on 5 blockers for 60 snaps a game. That wouldn't be my preference. So I'll be curious to see, does it appeal to James Vaughters, a guy who's going to free agency? And then the Bombers, we all know the Bombers don't pay American defensive tackles. They haven't for years, back to Stove Richardson and probably before that. So I wonder, is Jamal Woods just destined to be going somewhere else next year, and a new young American will come and take over that spot? But if you can lock down, they prioritize coverage so much, and to me, Holm, Nichols, and Kramdi are so critical to that coverage that those are 3 I absolutely positively pray the Bombers resign.
Yeah, I think Nichols and Holm especially. A lot of the people that follow the Bombers closely and have for years understand how underrated and underappreciated they are outside of the market. And it would absolutely suck to see them go. And I'm with you on that. They need to do what they can to bring those players back. I want to get to a tweet that you put out the other day, Derek, before we continue on free agency here. This one was on the relative rest. Really interested me on the
Connor,
schedule.
Yes,
I want to get to this, but I found this really, really interesting. You put out a tweet that, kind of looked at every team and their schedule and kind of cumulatively looked at how much rest they'll have and how much they'll be playing against teams coming off of buys and things like that. What do Bomber fans need to know about how rested the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will be next season compared to other teams around the league?
Yeah, it's so basically all it is the Bombers play on a Friday. They play on a Friday. They essentially have 6 days of rest in between that. It's just days in which they're not playing a game, right? So you play Friday, you'd have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in which you're not playing a game. It's 6 days of rest. If the other team that's coming in on Friday played on Saturday, well, they have 5 days of rest. Thus, the Bombers have 1 more. That would seem to be an advantage. I think we can all think that would be a physiological advantage. So the chart that you see is just one that I do every year, and just look at a team's entire schedule and go, okay, well, for their 18 games, how much rest do they have compared to their opponents, right? And in this one, Toronto, as you see there, is between 6 and 8. So they have 7 more days of rest over the course of the season than their opponents. They actually have 9 games, Toronto does, in which they have more rest than their opponents, and only 4 games in which they have less rest than their opponents, which, because they're being taken on this World Cup adventure, I think is probably deserved. Yes. But the Bombers are right in behind them again. So the Bombers actually, they only twice play a team coming off a bye, so that's good news for them. Of course, they come off a bye 3 times in which they'll play a team that is not coming off a bye, so that helps to their +6 in the relative rest. So as far as that part of the schedule goes, there'd be other considerations of, okay, well, are you doing that thing from 2023 where they went from Toronto to BC in 5 days? There'd be other stuff like flights and stuff. But at least from this perspective, in the rest that they'll have compared to the teams that they play, they're in a pretty good spot. Montreal, brings up the rear. But the CFL this year did a pretty good job of keeping it tight. It seems like they tried to help Toronto out a little bit because they're going to play, I think it's 12 road games essentially. So throw them a bone. But you look at Edmonton, Ottawa, Saskatchewan, BC, Hamilton, they're all pretty close to even with their opponents. So yeah, it's one of those ones where you go 7 days rest versus 4 days rest. I feel like I know who's going to be better set to win this football game.
Yeah. And I think Toronto, like you said, they deserve maybe to be thrown a bone given that they're playing, 13 road games this season or something like that, something crazy with the World Cup adventure that they're going on there. I know Zach is going to ask about a certain coaching position. So I'll leave that to him in the next question. Zach, you can get to that. But I want to ask you kind of a video gamey, like fantasy football type of question. The CFL just released their top 30 free agents across the league, or pending free agents. If money didn't matter and like nothing mattered, and you could choose one player from that list to put on the 2026 Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who would it be?
Can I pick a guy who's already been signed from that list?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I would have, every once in a while, a player comes along where I go, this is just my money truck guy. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to back up this money truck. Please take from it whatever you need. Come to work for us, and then we'll all be fine. And for me, like Keon Hatcher.
Hatcher, yeah.
Man, Keon Hatcher is so good.
Stud.
He catches absolutely everything. The guy tore his Achilles. Did he look like he tore his Achilles last year when he was ripping out 1,600 yards and making incredible contested catches? He kind of has everything that I think a team wants from a receiver. So, and when you look at what the Bombers could have used last year, I mean, a number one elite level receiver. It's silly to say like every team could use one, but a number one elite top of the league receiver would have been amazing. So if you had me pick one guy from that top 30, I mean, Brady Oliveira, I love having him back, but Keon Hatcher would have been a guy I go, oh man, I would have loved to watch him for, 18 games a year and just marvel at the things that he can do.
And what about, just to jump on that, Terry, like if you think about position of need for the Bombers, I think we can look at receiver, O-line, D-line, as you said, maybe something they get in the draft or like at rookie camp. Maybe field corner where Jamal Parker, Dexter Lawson may have struggled a little bit. Like, where do you see is like the biggest need for the Bombers to get back to the top of the mountain next year? I think if they want to, when you look at the free agents, there's a lot of DBs on there, but they're all guys that the Bombers could look at and go, yeah, we could take you back and you could be pretty good for us, right? We could go Bonds, Nichols, safety, Holm, Parker, Kramdi, and kind of, Cam Allen, pardon me, at safety, and be set in our back six if those guys all were willing to re-sign. And then that doesn't even account for a guy like Dexter Lawson, who, I mean, struggled that first game, but did some really good stuff along the season, asked to do a bunch of different things. The place, receiver's the first one I come to. I don't want to overlook offensive line, though, because if Stanley and if Pat Neufeld are back, fantastic. They are still, the two oldest offensive linemen in the Canadian Football League, and they will be again next year if they're back, right? There were only 4, I believe it was, offensive linemen who had reached their 33rd birthday, and 3 played for the Bombers, and the other was Jamarcus Hardrick. Okay, at some point, that needs to be refreshed, right? So Ethan Vibert in the draft last year, yes, that's fantastic. Tui Ellie's a free agent. He's a guy who has provided depth, but has never claimed a starting spot, so you wonder what his future is. So I would immediately default to I would immediately say receiver, get some stud Americans, let's go. But there is not even that it hasn't been a question, but there is the looming, okay, well, what are they going to do at offensive line? Will they end up going 3 Americans on the offensive line at some point? Just because, there aren't a lot of reserves at this exact moment, unless this draft coming up bears a lot of fruit. There's not a lot, just hidden away in the pantry for the Bombers on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And, it'll be an interesting offseason. Now, DD, we know we don't want to take up too much of your valuable time because I'm sure you have to go track some stats, which is, thank goodness that you do that. I mean, you make graphics like the one Connor showed. I mean, we really are lucky to have you. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that, not that you have to do it, but there is a need, right? Because we could get into this another time, but I think the CFL needs to do a much better job of statistics and things like that. But we are very lucky that you do this. You showed me your database at the CFL Awards, which made my brain melt. So thank you. Thank goodness you do this. Just on the way out, OC, you talked a little bit about Tommy Condell as maybe Zach Collaros' first choice. I think about him, and he was the one. I believe he was the OC when Collaros was on pace to have his MOP season in 2015 before he got injured.
Yep.
So there's some history there. Maybe there's maybe Jarius Jackson deserves a look. Maybe there's other guys. I guess the one knock on Condell is he doesn't like to run the ball quite as much, but maybe
bring it on. Yes. Yeah. Brady Oliveira may not.
You love that.
I like offenses that take 10 yards a pass instead of 5 yards a run. That's just where I gravitate to. It just kind of makes sense. But there are definitely, I mean, you make a real good point of there are teams that run the ball and there are teams that do not run the football, right? And, you see various levels of success in all of those. Buck Pierce runs the football. He loves running the football, and BC was the highest outputting offense in the CFL this year. Buck loved to run the football last year in Winnipeg, and Winnipeg put up only 23 points a game on offense in 2024, right? So, yeah, I just think you need to. The more I look at it, and last year I kind of discounted it, but we learn more as we go along. Your offensive coordinator and your quarterback, and especially a quarterback to Zach Collaros' level, need to be of the same mind and on the same page. So, yeah, does it mean 32 points a game like it was in 2023? Probably not, because that was a phenomenal number. But they need to be on the same page, and it seemed very clear upon reflection, even more so, but definitely in the moment where you go, I don't think that Jason Hogan and the guys who play in this offense are in the same spot or think the same things. Or as Zach said, what was the line? We drilled things in camp that we didn't drill in the regular season.
Yeah.
That was one that could have kind of slipped by, but we all kind of looked at each other like, they practice? Is he saying they practice stuff in training camp that they never did during the season? What were we doing there for 20 days at the soccer field? So yeah, it needs to be, and it's the risk you take, right? When you go hunting for the next great coach, the next guy who deserves an opportunity. Worked out beautifully with Jordan Younger because it's been the top defense in the Canadian Football League the last 2 years. To me, did not work for Jason Hogan, and the fact that they were reportedly interviewing other candidates to be the offensive coordinator kind of, I think as Bomber fans, lets us know what might be up. So yeah, who's interested, who's free, and to me, you just have to jive with the quarterback because Zach's got less than 10 years left playing in the CFL. I don't know how many years he's going to play, but it's probably under 10 years left. Let's take this, a guy who is special in some parts of his game. Let's harness that and make it its best, because that's honestly the Bombers' best chance to get back to tops in the West Division.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And look, you look around the league, coaching hirings are happening. The Argos are finding their coach. Mike O'Shea returns for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Just quickly on the way out, I know that kind of flew under the radar because they announced it Friday of Grey Cup weekend and then announced the terms like Monday morning after Grey Cup weekend. Very much waited till after the game happened. But just on the way out, last question for you. How big is it to have Mike O'Shea back for the next 3 years for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
They value stability, right? That's what they'll always say is we value stability and continuity. Those two itties, right? Like that's the way they want to go. So yeah, I think there are people who, if Mike had moved on to Toronto, I think there are some Bomber fans who said, "Oh, okay, let's work on the next one," which just shows you how crazy it's been here for the last 5-6 years, right? Like it's only 10 wins. Only a crossover playoff spot? Oh, this is awful. Burn it all down. Okay, I get it. Just because we've been so spoiled as fans. But I think if nothing else, I mean, even at its most in its most pejorative light, Mike deserves a chance to rebuild. Let's say if you wanted to cast it that way, things have gone great. 5 Grey Cups, they won 2. At least in a conversation for dynastic teams, ones will look back at 20 years and go, man, they went to 5 straight, eh? That's pretty great. It deserved a chance. So I think ultimately a good thing. He certainly defined the direction this organization goes in, and it's brought us a lot of great players. So yeah, I think it's ultimately a positive thing. And I mean, Mike had options. He had options I think he didn't even explore with that Hamilton thing. It doesn't sound like he even explored that much at all. So I think it's great. And it's going to be a challenge though, because man, did BC look good late in the season into the playoffs. Saskatchewan just won the Grey Cup, and Calgary, for me, came from absolutely nowhere to be in the playoffs from, a team I thought was going to be dead last in the league. And oh, by the way, Edmonton just re-signed its quarterback, and if they bring in some receivers, could be a team on the rise as well. So it's a tall task in the West Division, but yeah, for year 13 of Mike O'Shea, I think ultimately a really move. I think the Bombers are blessed that he's able to come back.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fascinating 2026, Derek. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it. We hope the rest of the offseason treats you well and you're well rested and ready to go for another great season of Bombers football on CJOB. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.